So after the knife attack and nearly dying, my best friend Todd got on a plane to Japan, and he went one direction in life, and I got on a plane to Arizona and went another direction. And when I got to Arizona, a little bit of time passed, and I was still a little bit in shock about everything that had happened at the payphone, but I wasn't ready to give up the dream at that time. I didn't want to. So shortly thereafter, I stepped into a karate dojo or studio. And immediately, right away, the smells hit me, the kicking, the punching, the swords on the wall, the smell from the mats, the sweat, everything, Suddenly my mind was taken back to Alaska, where my friend Todd and I had been studying karate and talking about the Karate Kid and the whole Japan thing, going there, living that dream. Two teenage boys from Wasilla, Alaska, who had a dream. So everything came flooding back, and it was a little bit emotional for me. I had a hard time initially just taking it all in. But it also felt good. It felt good to be back in the karate studio. I was in there. I was excited on the one hand, but on the other hand, there was a little bit of jealousy there too. I wanted to be with my friend. I wanted to be there with him and doing our thing that we had dreamed about when we were in Wasilla, just a short time earlier. Not all that long, not all that long ago at that time. And I started to receive letters, from Todd, from Japan, and I would receive letters and I would, write back and all that. Remind you, this is in the late 80s. We had to actually write letters, handwritten letters and things like that, or send postcards, but everything was handwritten then, pretty much. And I would read his long letters, and he'd tell me about the food and riding on the subway and all these different things, and how many people there were. And I got a little bit jealous about that because I wanted to be there with him, and that was hard for me. As excited as I was for him, I was, craving and wanting to be there. I was really craving the same things that he was experiencing. The thing was, on my side, I was not willing to give up the dream, and I was still kind of working it from my own angle, I guess you could say. And part of that was, getting into karate. And so I did. I got in there and I started studying karate, and I started moving up through the belt ranks and all that. And eventually I got up one day my instructor came to me and he said, "Hey, would you like to teach?" And I said, well, I was taken aback actually by it. I never expected him. I was just a student like anybody else. And he came up to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to teach? I think you'd be a good teacher." And I said, okay, yeah, okay. Even though I was a little bit nervous about it. So I started teaching, took a while to build the confidence that I needed, because I wasn't really sure if I could do this 100%. People are looking at you, they're looking at you to teach them the right things, the right way, right? Say the right things. And suddenly I go from somebody who nobody believed in that car. And now I've got kids looking at me to believe in them. So it switched, the script flipped. And that was a little bit of a shocker for me. I wasn't used to that. Again, I didn't have anybody really in my corner when I was young. And now these kids had somebody in their corner, me. And it was an adjustment for me, but it felt good too. It felt really good. And so, yeah, I felt really good about what I was doing. I felt like I was building confidence. I felt like my life was really changing, but I wasn't in Japan, Still, I wasn't gonna give it up, so I kept on plugging away. Eventually, I went to Albuquerque, and I, for my black belt test, I got my black belt. I was there about 3 days, got beat up, do a lot of kicks and punches, and did a bunch of other stuff. And then I drove back to Arizona and picked up my life again. But Todd was still in Japan, and I was still in Arizona. Now, here's the funny thing about this. well, I don't want to say it's funny. It's not really funny. It's ironic. So our whole thing was we wanted to go to Japan, study karate, kind of do that Karate Kid thing. You know, we wanted to have that Mr. Miyagi. You know, I really connected to that movie, and so did he. But the funny thing is, as I said, it's not really funny, but it's more ironic than funny. Todd, my friend, never pursued karate. He never got his black belt. He never even got into it, as far as I know. Whereas I did, but I was in the U.S., you know. And so there was a little bit of irony there with that. And even though he was living the dream, he didn't actually go there he never actually did what we had planned to do, which was that part is, you know, the ironic thing about it all. So for me, you know, some years passed. It took me several years to get my black belt. It didn't happen. It took me many years to get that. In the system that I was in, it wasn't like a 2 or 3 year gig. It was 5, 6, 7 years before I got my black belt, you know, practicing multiple days a week. So he never got his black belt, and I did. And that was a, you know, like I said, I chuckle about it now, but it's more ironic than anything, I feel. So anyway, the kids, you know, they came to me for guidance. You know, the kids I was teaching strength, and I started building more and more confidence. They, you know, they knew that I believed in them, all things that I didn't have when I was young. And, you know, I didn't have any, like I said, I didn't have anybody in my corner. So there was kind of a shift in my identity and all that. You know, I now became a role model. I now became somebody that kids looked up to, that sort of thing. I didn't know at the time where all this was going to lead and who I was going to be helping in the future. Kind of, I guess you could say kind of that, you know, this whole instructor thing, getting back to karate, kind of planted the seed for what would come next in my life. And so, you know, the thing of it is that I think about as I'm talking here is about dreams. You know, you have a dream like Todd and I had, you know, a teenager's dream. It was our dream. You know, I'm an older guy now, but I've never given up on it. You know, I never gave up on it. And the thing of it is that in your mind, you have a plan, you formulate the dream in your head, and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, and then this, and then this, and then, you know, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, you know, that sort of thing. You have your plan, but as we all know, the best laid plans sometimes go awry. You know, they don't always work out, and oftentimes in life, they don't work out. And that was the case with me, you know, with what happened at the payphone, the knife attack, all that stuff, landing me in Arizona, you know, the whole process of you know, from the car all the way forward and landing in Arizona to study karate, getting the black belt while my friend was in Japan. You know, we had a whole different plan, and it didn't work out that way. But because I wasn't willing to give up the dream of eventually getting to Japan, you know, it survived. The dream survived. And if the dream is real, I can tell you this, if it's a real dream, it's gonna survive. It's gonna survive. You're gonna get there. You're gonna get there. And I feel like that's where I was heading, especially at that time. And so I still haven't made it to Japan, but I hope to, and I plan to. It's a video for another day, actually. So, but if you haven't seen any of my other videos, you can check those out up here. The series. This is an ongoing series about my young life and a lot of things that happened during my young life, and the dream that my friend and I had, you know, also. But this getting that black belt meant a lot to me, you know. It meant a lot, and I didn't know where it was going to lead me to in terms of, you know, helping others and so forth. So come back, subscribe so you can get notified of the next, you know, video coming out, that sort of thing. So I really, really appreciate you watching. You mean a lot to me. God bless, and we'll see you real soon.